Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today our special guest and I are talking about the world of recruitment and how to make a career in this industry. Today's guest is the Chief Revenue Officer for Implement4, Jenny Andrawis, who brings over 16 years of experience in the restoration industry, 20 years in the marketing space as a marketing executive. Prior to leading revenue generation initiatives for Implement4, Jenny has held several roles in this space, ranging from companies that make $20 million to over $800 million a year. Her strengths include driving integration and alignment between all revenue related functions, ensuring a seamless communication and maximizing revenue production. Jenny is known for her direct approach, results oriented mindset, and high emotional intelligence, which emotional intelligence is extremely important in this industry. And she leads from the front and focuses on data driven results and understands the little nuances between marketing and sales. Jenny is also an active committee member for Social Media Club Washington, D.C., promoting media literacy and ethical behavior. She can do almost everything, I guess, is the nicest thing to say. And the list can go on and on. But without further ado, please welcome Jenny.
Hi, Kayla. How are you?
I am good. How are you? Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad we got to meet and have this opportunity to talk and, learn a little bit about you and this whole mysterious world of recruitment. But before we start diving into our topics of conversation, let's let everybody know, how you got started in this space and how you've built your career and what, ended you in this position in Implement4.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long journey, I guess, before me becoming the Chief Revenue Officer for Implement4. I started out in restoration back in April of 2012. I'm based out of Maryland, and I applied for a job position as a marketing director for a company called Roland Companies. They were a very strong regional restoration player on the East Coast. And so anyway, I applied for a marketing position there, um, got the job, and 8 years later, from being with Roland, we then got bought up by, a large brand. I continued to work with the large brand. Was promoted within the large brand, and then shifted gears, went to another large brand, um, and then started thinking about what's next for me. By now I'm completely, um, I'm a restoration professional through and through. I've been with restoration since 2012. I know a lot of people in this space. I've learned from a lot of great people in the restoration industry. And so I wanted to stay in the industry, but do something a little different. As these thoughts were kind of going through my head, one of my partners, Dan Peterson, reached out to me, and it was very kind of serendipitous as I'm going through, what next for me? What is my next step in this professional journey? And Dan reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of putting together a recruitment firm that's unlike anything else that we currently have in this space." And he wanted to put this firm together by bringing SMEs on board. So, I would bring the sales, marketing, customer success kind of know-how to the company, and then he would find other partners to lead the other departments per se. So, Implement4 was born, and we do a couple of different things. We are now 1 year old, and recruiting is definitely one of our larger services that we provide. But we also provide marketing support, sales support, customer success support, as well as operational support. Um, as it relates to recruitment, Kayla, I think we are seeing a lot of success there just due to what the partners are bringing to the table. So myself, Dan Peterson, and Ethan Harrell, we're the three partners, and we have hired a team of recruiters. So we have about 15 recruiters that help us go out and source great talent. But I think it's really the know-how that we have of the industry and also the amount of people that we know really helps in the process. We know what restoration is, what it isn't. It's a very niche kind of service. And so we know how to find the right talent to fit that niche industry. So yeah, so it's been super exciting for the past year. And we're just helping place great talent and great restoration companies.
I think that's so key in the journey, that one has in this space. And, to hear your journey, you do get in that mindset of what's next for me. And I think that that's one of those things that isn't talked about enough, to be completely honest. A lot of us are just in the mindset of like, I have to work and I need to love what I do and pay my bills. But there's a bigger picture here. And I think it starts with recruitment and being a great candidate, but also understanding what everybody needs in this space. So with that being said, can you, it's hard to say what the perfect candidate is, I guess, to say the least, but what is it something that you guys look for when it comes to experience or, understanding the skill set of somebody? What do you guys look for in particular to help them, maybe find their forever home?
That's a really good question. So I think the obvious things, well, the two obvious things that kind of um, highlight a candidate and help us to find their, I wouldn't say forever home because sometimes people aren't looking for a forever home. They're looking for their next step or their next adventure. And and some people are looking for a forever home. They come to us and they say, I want to be in this role for the next 10 years, and it's the last 10 years of my career or the last 5 years of my career. Um, but I think the two biggest pieces we look at are one, resumes, and then the second is the interview process. And as we start having conversation with a candidate, we get to hear them tell us their story. The hardest thing about finding the right candidate or the hardest thing to assess are those intangibles, right? It's work ethic, it's personality, it's can they work well within a team, it's collaboration, it's leadership style. Um, and so those are the things that we kind of have to get very creative in figuring out how do we uh, understand those intangibles. Because the resume can look great, and then you meet with a candidate and it's like, oh wow, they're not comfortable in a team type of environment or such. So, or they're not flexible. And I think in restoration, if there's anything I've learned is flexibility. You have to be very flexible, malleable. We get called on weekends, we get called during the holidays. If there is a disaster, it's not going to wait for the next 9 to 5 workday. So I think those kinds of abilities are the ones that we really vet for. And
Mhm.
they are those intangible qualities, the ones that are really hard to kind of, assess. It's hard to put those on paper.
I think that's key to bring that to light because, I think oftentimes there's the reverse of that, right? Maybe somebody's resume doesn't say everything truly about them, right? I think that's also a big thing too that, not everybody is gonna have the best resume put together. And that kind of leads me to my next thought is, you know, resume, obviously, personality is another thing, team environment, but also what about, you know, if they're, up to date with like technology, if they utilize, tools, if Is that also important? I think that that's another way to say like those are things that you should put on your resume, right? I don't think people think about that oftentimes, like you should have a skills form of your resume essentially. And that's, whether it's customer service or hey, maybe you're great with DocuSketch or maybe you have 20 plus years with Xactimate or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can put in there. So can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's important too, because sometimes we know that we're in a special space and we may feel like, oh, they should know what I'm talking about if I say I did
Right.
this position at this job. Can you dive into that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a resume is a great place to kind of capture all those technical skills, what certs they have, what software skills they have. But I think to answer your question, I think technology is super important. And what we're seeing is it's moving at, you know, uh, lightning speed or the speed of light, especially with AI. A lot of, the Matterport, the DocuSketch, the Xactimate, all these different software companies are trying to think of how can they themselves keep up with technology and stay relevant and compete and outshine the competition in those spaces. And so they're bringing on a lot of this technology and AI capability that we have not seen before. And so I think it's super important, super relevant, and much needed for the candidates to stay very abreast and be in the know of what the next technological breakthrough is. Um, and I think that's true for all the industries, not just restoration. I think it's important for any industry. Technology is moving real quick, and AI is taking us by storm. And it's almost like you just have to keep up with it. And it's every day the software is rolling out a new version, new capabilities, new abilities, and we have to keep up with it.
And I also think this is important for any candidate or anybody really that's looking to hire somebody is you have to ask questions too in both spaces, whether you're the person recruiting or you're the person that's actually looking for, a current role, what your next big thing is. And it's okay to not know all the answers, especially with the advancements in technology, because maybe you're in a position that doesn't have to utilize technology, but
Right.
maybe your question is, who do I talk to or where should I go? What groups help me with the advancement of technology? And again, this goes to emotional intelligence and just being a self-starter and motivated and all of that. So we know what we want to look for and how to look for things, but also we've kind of talked about what you should do as a candidate, stay up to date, refresh your resume. I think that's also a really big thing too. For some reason, some people don't do that, but you really should do that, especially if you're
Yeah.
actively looking to be recruited. But what happens when you guys hit common issues, and what are those common issues? I think if I asked you 20 years ago what common issues were in the recruiting space or just really the restoration space, it'd be a lot different than what they are today.
Yeah. So the rise of remote work is a common issue, Kayla. I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's how to work remotely. And the funny thing is, post-pandemic, a lot of the companies have come back, I'm going to say online, or others have come back in person. And some companies are looking for people to be in person, while the workforce is now very comfortable being remote. And so that rise of that remote work environment is definitely a challenge we didn't have 20 years ago. And just for us then as recruiters and as SMEs to assess that cultural fit, right? So we have to ensure that this person is going to be a productive remote team member and that the work environment is open to a productive remote team member. Um, but it presents a unique challenge for hiring managers and recruiters alike. I think Also, a lot of times companies think, well, if you are working remote, then you must not really be working. And so what ends up happening is people that are in remote work situations feel like they have to put in an extra effort and constantly be on. And that really messes up with work-life balance, which is already a problem in our industry. And finding that nice balance between work and life in restoration is always been a challenge. Um, so yeah, I think the rise of remote work post-pandemic is definitely a challenge we didn't have 20 years ago. I think another challenge, which is really interesting, is there's this phenomena, the ghost candidate phenomena. And I didn't know that existed, being in the marketing space for so many years and then kind of joining, Implement4 and now recruiting, great sales and marketing and customer success talent. But ghost candidates exist, and it's people that um, will apply to a job. You interview them, first round, second round, third round. They are great. Their resume checks all the boxes. Their personality really shines. They're a go-getter, and then they disappear. And they disappear from the hiring process, oftentimes without explanation. And it makes us hard to
Mhm.
move forward with some of these with the best candidates because they just disappear. And it could be, something on their end. It could be life has thrown them a curveball. They're too nervous to take that next step. Um, you know, whatever the situation may be, but uh, yeah, it's a major phenomenon. It's called the ghost candidate. They just
It's
disappear.
so scary. Yeah, it's scary too because it's so hard to hire just in general. I also know it's really hard for people to find work too, and it's because of situations like that, right? Because the interview process is not just one or two interviews. Oftentimes it's four, and then once you get to four, in the world of recruiting, there's oftentimes the last interview with your actual client, right? To make sure that they're a great fit. And I think sometimes people can get scared, which can cause them to be a ghost candidate. But also, sometimes I feel like communication has not been the greatest since the pandemic, to be completely honest. And I think it's because of the influx of people who are looking for jobs, right? You used to get within 72 hours whether you made it on to the next round or you didn't. And we don't really get those anymore. Um,
Right.
uh, I think it was like a year ago, I was applying to a job and I didn't hear anything. And obviously, in my mindset, I was just still applying to jobs that I felt would be a good fit. And then, like 6 months later, I got a hey, thank you for your application. And I was like, I completely even forgot that I applied.
Applied.
And in my mind, I'm like, is it a good thing that they sent me something 6 months later, or should they just have not sent me anything at all, right? And I think that that's also where we get into a weird space too, because if that's happened to some of our candidates and they feel like something might be too good to be true, they may just automatically move on and be like, well, they probably weren't going to tell me if I was a great fit or not anyway. So I think that we're battling a lot of kind of demons essentially in the world of recruitment and career opportunities. And everybody has different common issues, but I think that the most important thing to stress is that nobody is alone in the recruiting space, to be completely honest, whether you're doing it internally or using someone like Implement4. Everybody's seeing challenges, and the best thing to do is reach out to yourself or someone in the space to be able to answer questions like, hey, what are you seeing? And I think that that's another thing where collaboration is really key in our space in particular, especially in restoration and cleaning and inspection, because though it's a big space, it's really not. You could probably find a couple of people that you have in common, if you really had to, right? And I think that's the beauty of this space as
100%.
well.
A
So
hundred
speak
percent.
exactly. I think it's important for us to take that second and say like, okay, they worked here and I think I know somebody here. Like take that extra second to kind of validate what you're feeling, or maybe you're like, yeah, maybe they're not the best fit, but then you talk to somebody and you're like, don't believe what you see on paper. They're actually a really hard worker. They're driven, they're motivated, they're a self-starter, they love to learn. And you're like, wow, I would have never guessed that looking at their resume, right? And sometimes people don't like to brag about themselves either. I think that's also there's some truth behind that. Nobody really, not nobody, but a lot of people don't like to brag about themselves, right? And I think that that's also important to make those connections and call those references. Or if somebody doesn't supply you with references, ask for some, right? So once you find the perfect candidate, how do we help them, or how do you guys help them, or help have your clients help them build a career? Whether it's, maybe it's somebody that's just wanting to get into the industry to be a technician, or maybe they're filling a PM spot or operations. You know, do you recommend certifications and training programs, or, becoming part of an association and going to trade shows and things like that? What is the kind of the beginning in building your own career in this industry?
I think I think the beginning is attitude, having that attitude of wanting to take the next step. And I think that's something, those soft skills are nothing you can go and get certified in. To have that can do, positive, team-oriented attitude, a positive outlook on things, being a problem solver, especially in restoration, those are the first steps. I think if you have that right mindset, then there are many different associations in our space where you can go to get certified in the field that you're going after. If you want to become, a mold technician, or if you want to specialize in water and flood damage, right? Or if you want to be a marketing person or a salesperson for restoration. So depending on the I guess the job you want to land in, there are different paths. Um, I think what sets us apart is when we work with a candidate, we're helping illuminate that path for them, depending on, where do you want to be in 5 years? And then based on that is how we work with them to say, well, you should really look into this certification, or you should really take this class, or be a part of this association or group. I think something else too, Kayla, kind of circling back to, you were talking about your experience of applying to a job and then 6 months later you got a thanks but no thanks kind of email. Oftentimes we take that criticism, that positive criticism that we are getting from our client, and we turn that into a learning moment for the candidate. And not just, we don't just echo the sentiment of, oh, we're sorry you didn't get the job, but we think you need to brush up on this skill set. Or if someone's trying to apply for, let's say, a general manager type of role, and they fall short because of a certain skill set or lack of experience, we try to work with a candidate to get them to that next level. So to provide that, um, you know, that criticism where they can take that and do something with it to help better themselves, I think is key. And how we treat our candidates. I think we're just kind of following the golden rule, do unto others. Um, and early on in my career, you get 1,000 no's before you get the one yes.
Mhm.
And it would have been super helpful if companies or hiring managers say, Kayla, you didn't make the cut, and this is why. So then
Mhm.
you know what to work on, you know what to focus on moving forward, right? And what path to take. So I think, that's a big kind of service, and a big way that we help our candidates.
Yeah, that's really key too. I think that's one thing that people need to understand too, is like you said, you get all of these no's before you get that one life-changing yes. And it is true. If I look back at my career as a whole, the amount of no's that I've seen it would have been nice to know why, or even if it's
Yeah,
like, hey, we actually received like 500 applications and the first 10 were actually who we were looking for. It's not that you had a bad application or a bad resume. It was actually because we had so many people apply. I think that also too would really help people who are looking for a job too, because it's not necessarily that you were doing something wrong or anything like that. We have to be realistic with the amount of job applications that are coming in these days, too. We're in a space where any one job could have 1,000 applications or 500 or 100, and you only have such a small HR department. How are they all going to get through? How is one or two people, you know, gonna get through 500 applications, let alone 100? And I think that that also is an expectation that people need to go in with that things like LinkedIn and Indeed, they sometimes they do show how many applications have been submitted. And it can also help you as the person who's applying understand like, okay, there's actually like 400 other people applying. The chances of me getting in are not 90%. And I think that that's
right.
also a realization that people need to understand as well. But I think due diligence, like you said, for people who are looking for the perfect fit or a great candidate, need to take the time and tell people, hey, thank you for taking the time for one, applying and showing interest, but two, we had the opportunity to either talk to you or go through your resume, and this is what we think is missing or we need more information on. And it'll allow that person to grow and also not make the same, not necessarily mistake. I wouldn't say mistake, but maybe miss out on something that they could have really um, set themselves apart from somebody else, or maybe put their resume at the top of the pile. And I think that's crucial for anybody at any point in their career. And I think you talked about this, people can be coming in looking for a job that are fresh into the space. People can come mid-career, and there's some people that come in towards the end of their career like, hey, I owned and operated for 20 years. I'm really just looking to be a PM or just a technician, or,
Right.
I want to keep myself busy for the next 5 or 10 years, but do something I enjoy. And I think that's also something that is different from 20 years ago, right? People don't stay at companies for sometimes 10 years, 20 years anymore. We see people change jobs, especially in this space, quite frequently, to be honest. Is that a challenge for you guys?
So with a younger workforce, definitely. I think the magic number is 2 to 3 years. It's become very acceptable to change, companies or jobs every 2 to 3 years. Um, that didn't used to be the case 20 years ago. You had to not show like jumping around on your resume, where now it's not seen as jumping around to be with a brand for 2 years and then and go elsewhere. It's now become more common.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. Honestly, I remember when I was fresh out of high school and my first job, it was very simple going into college because I played sports too. And one of the courses that I took, I can't remember the name of it, but it was just about career and what you should do and how you should put things on your resume and all that. And I think that at that time it was like people like for you to be at your job for at least 7 years. And I was thinking to myself,
Yikes.
okay, so anywhere that I walk into, I need to have the mindset of I'm staying here for 7 years, and now I look back and I've had lengthy stints at employers, but I just think I'm like, wow. I mean, I've gone through the hiring process for somebody on my team before too, and the amount of people that I saw, not even just 1 or 2 years, but like months. It was very shocking to me because I was not used to seeing that. But I think we also have to know times have changed. Younger workforce, they're trying to figure out what they want. Do their morals and ethics align with the company? And I think that's also important too, to understand that our people's mentalities are so much different than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And those are just some things that we have to understand in all aspects of where we work, whether you're hiring, whether you're HR, whether you're the owner operator, whatever the case may be. There's there's things that everybody needs to understand in the process. And in this space in particular, maybe we can sit down in a couple of years and talk about this again and kind of reflect and say, like, hey, where are we now? Is it back to the mindset of, 5 years being at an employer? We just don't know what the future necessarily holds. Um, and with all of that being said, for career building and everything like that, and staying current, we touched on this for recruiting, right? We want people to stay up to date and all that stuff. Are there questions in the process or ways to find the best fit when people are thinking, you know, how do I stay current in the industry? Is it with just industry trends or technology? Does that help you sit people where they need to be essentially? Because I know in some aspects, there's not technology really in some positions that changes quite frequently, to be honest. And then there's some that technology is like changing every day, I feel like, whether
Yeah.
it's your, go ahead, go ahead.
I think the brands that insert and are very active and adamant about bringing technology into all the different aspects of restoration, those are the ones that are really shining, Kayla. I think um, you'll find owners, operators that say, um, there's not much technology. My whatever, insert title here, my truck driver needs to know or have, they're just driving equipment from point A to B or what have you. But it's the companies that say, wait a minute, there is technology that truck driver could utilize. Um, those are the ones that really set themselves apart. Uh, I think data is power. And so the more data you have, the more you know, the more, the better decisions you can make. And so I think when you implement technology, it or at all the different types and facets of a restoration company, that's when you really have data to pull and draw from and come up with these conclusions as to, oh, we should be doing more of this or less of that, or this
Mhm.
is how we make this, a smoother process, or this is how we make this a more positive work environment. This is how we increase our sales. So I think there is room for technology at all different facets, whether you're driving a truck of dehues or you are manning the warehouse and keeping an eye on inventory or ordering, the lay flat or whatever the task may be. I think there's definitely room for tech-driven processes.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. Honestly, I think some people may say like, oh, there's no technology or the technology that we had has been the same for 20 years, but I think there's always room for improvement. And there are also people who are really up to date with technology or maybe what's coming out. Or maybe there's another piece of technology that's used in a different part of your business that actually could be utilized in the space or the position that you're talking about. And I think the most important thing in all of this career building and recruiting and all of that is it starts with not only the candidate, but like you said, the soft skills, right? You have to have the desire, you have to have the drive, you have to have people skills. There's just so many skills that you need to have that don't really translate on paper sometimes, right? Like it's just one of those things, and that's why it's so important to have a process. Maybe the interviews, there's 4 interviews or what have you. And I think that's also important to understand for both candidates and those who are looking to fill roles at their business. I know sometimes we need people now, but I'd rather have the right person in a month than I would rather have the wrong person multiple times in the span of a month, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think you touched on something super important there, Kayla. And so we try to advise our clients to be a lot more, proactive in this very reactive industry. I think we're so used to, oh, there's a fire and we're all rushing out the door and, doing what needs to be done. But um, there's a big need for planning and being proactive. And so A lot of times we have clients that come to us and say, "Hey, I need a PM yesterday," and it's like, "Well, why didn't you call us the day before?" Like, you know, why are you calling now? Um, just trying to get our clients in the habit of being proactive and looking kind of ahead in the future and being able to plan. It's it's January 6th, and so you know, the past or the last quarter, we've been telling our clients to start thinking proactively. What are you going to need in the last quarter of 2024 to hit your 2025 goals, right? And so and I think that's for all of us, right? Like I'm sure you sat through strategic meetings the tail end of last year to plan for this new year that's now upon us. So, we try to kind of coach our clients to be proactive in a reactive restoration world.
Yeah, that's so true. I like how you said, somebody says we need such and such today. Well, how come you didn't call us like 3 days ago or even yesterday? That would have been a great heads up. And I just want to thank you for your time today. It's been very insightful, not only in the space of, our industry, but where all of these things apply across several industries, if not all of them. And I think that's also important too, that yes, we have criteria and yes, we have certain things that we need, but that's across every single industry, right? The goal is to always find somebody who is essentially the perfect fit for us at the time. But with that being said, you have any other things you'd like to say to our listeners?
Just want to wish everyone a happy new year. Super excited about 2025 and to see, what great things the restoration industry will achieve as a whole. We have a lot of amazing players in this industry. We have a lot of amazing brands. And I'm so proud, excited, and honored to be part of the restoration industry. And I can't wait to see what 2025 brings.
Likewise, I think we're gonna have a really great year. I want to say it's gonna be our comeback year, if you will. And I look forward to it, and I look forward to everybody making connections, especially maybe with Jenny now, right? I think that there's an opportunity to connect with her and Implement4 as well. And as always, we will see you on the next Ask the Expert. Take care.